"You sure you can handle this, old man?" The trainer smirked, watching him struggle with the weights. The whole gym was watching now, waiting for the old guy to give up. But when he rolled up his sleeve to get a better grip, they saw it, the prosthetic attachment point where his arm used to end. Suddenly, nobody was laughing anymore. Welcome to True Human Tales. Before we continue this powerful story of courage, sacrifice, and respect, tell me in the comments, from which city in the world are you watching this video today? And if you believe stories like this deserve to be heard, hit that subscribe button. We're building a community that honors the ones who never gave up. Iron's gym sat on the edge of town, wedged between a tire shop and a diner that had seen better days. It wasn't fancy. No marble counters, no juice bars, no Instagram-worthy lighting. Just concrete floors, metal equipment, and the smell of sweat that had soaked into the walls over 30 years. It opened every morning at 5:30 a.m., and by 6, the regulars had claimed their territories. The bodybuilders owned the free weights. The runners conquered the card mills. The young Marines from the nearby base dominated the functional fitness area. And in the back corner, near the older equipment that most people ignored, worked a man they all called Gimpy. His real name was Robert Chen, but nobody bothered to learn it. He was in his early 50s, maybe older, with graying hair and a limp that made every step look painful. He wore the same thing every day: long-sleeved gray shirt, black sweatpants, worn sneakers that had seen too many miles. He arrived exactly at 6 a.m., worked out alone for 90 minutes, and left without speaking to anyone. The younger guys found him fascinating in the way people slow down for car accidents. They'd watch him struggle with weights they could lift with one hand, watch him grimace through exercises that should have been simple, watch him move like every motion caused pain. "Why does he even come here?" One of the Marines, Corporal Jackson, asked his buddy during their morning workout. "Dude can barely walk, let alone lift." His friend, Lance Corporal Martinez, shrugged. "Maybe he's trying to relive his glory days or something." You know how old guys get. They weren't cruel about it, not exactly. They just saw him as part of the gym's background noise, like the broken air conditioner or the flickering fluorescent light that nobody bothered to fix. But they noticed things. They noticed that he never took breaks. While they rested between sets, scrolled their phones, chatted with friends, he kept moving. Slowly, painfully, but constantly. They noticed that he never complained. Not when the weights were too heavy, not when his leg gave out during squats, not when sweat dripped into his eyes and he had to stop to wipe his face with a towel. They noticed that he never asked for help, never requested a spot, never looked around for someone to adjust the machine height or load plates onto the bar. And they noticed that despite all his struggles, despite the limp and the grimaces and the obvious pain, he kept coming back. Every day, 6 a.m. sharp, rain or shine. The gym's owner, a former powerlifter named Tony Ricci, had a different perspective. He'd been watching Robert for 3 months now, ever since the man had walked in with a membership form and cash payment, no questions asked. Tony had seen a lot of people come through his doors over the years, young athletes chasing scholarships, middle-aged executives fighting dad bods, retirees trying to stay mobile. But Robert was different. There was something about the way he moved, deliberate, careful, like he was relearning how to use his own body. And there was something about his eyes, a kind of distant focus that Tony recognized from his own military days. "Guys got discipline," Tony told his wife over dinner one night. "Most people, they hit a wall, they quit. This guy hits a wall, he figures out how to climb over it." "Maybe you should talk to him," she suggested. Tony shook his head. "He's not ready for that yet." But he will be. It was a Tuesday morning in March when everything changed. The gym was busier than usual. A group of young Marines had come in early, preparing for their annual fitness test. They were loud, confident, pushing each other to lift heavier, run faster, do more. Robert was in his usual spot, working through his routine with methodical precision. Today he was focusing on upper body, bench press, rows, shoulder exercises that clearly caused him significant discomfort. The Marines were at the next station over, taking turns on the lat pull-down machine. Jackson was up, loading the pin at 200 pounds and cranking out reps like it was nothing. "Come on, bro, that's light work," Martinez called out. "Go for 220. Jackson reset the weight and knocked out another set, his form perfect, his movements fluid. That's when they noticed Robert watching. He was sitting on the bench press, towel around his neck, clearly between sets, but his attention had drifted to their workout. Martinez nudged Jackson. "Yo, we got an audience." Jackson looked over and grinned. "Hey, old-timer, you want to try some real weight?" Robert didn't respond immediately. He just looked at them with that same distant expression he always wore. "I'm good," he said quietly. "Just resting between sets." But Jackson was feeling his oats. The pre-workout was kicking in, his buddies were watching, and he had that particular kind of cockiness that came from being 22 and bulletproof. "Come on, man, live a little. When's the last time you tried to push yourself?" Robert's jaw tightened slightly. "I push myself every day." "Yeah?" Jackson gestured at the 45-pound dumbbells Robert had been using for his shoulder press. "With those baby weights?" "Dude, my little sister could lift more than that." A few other gym members had started to notice the exchange. The morning crowd was small but tight-knit, and drama was rare at Irons. Robert stood up slowly, his limp more pronounced as he moved. "I work with what I can handle." "What you can handle?" Jackson laughed. "Bro, you're at a gym. The whole point is to handle more than you think you can." He walked over to the lat pull-down machine and reset the weight to 150 pounds. Still heavy, but manageable for most fit adults. "Tell you what, old man. 1 set, 10 reps. If you can't do it, no shame. But at least you'll know what you're capable of." The gym had gone quiet now. Even the guys on the treadmills had turned their attention to the confrontation. Robert looked at the machine, then at Jackson, then at the small crowd that had gathered. "You sure you want to do this?" he asked quietly. Jackson's grin widened. "Oh, I'm sure. The question is, are you?" Robert walked over to the machine, slowly, each step deliberate and careful. He sat down on the bench and reached for the bar. That's when he rolled up his sleeves. The left arm came first. Where Robert's hand should have been, there was metal, not a crude hook or simple prosthetic, but a sophisticated mechanical hand with articulated fingers and a wrist that moved with pneumatic precision. The attachment point was visible just below his elbow, a titanium interface where flesh met machine, surgical scars radiating outward like spokes on a wheel. Jackson's smirk faded, but it was the right arm that made the gym go completely silent. As Robert rolled up that sleeve, they could see the damage. Burns covered most of his forearm, the skin mottled and shiny with scar tissue. Near his shoulder, surgical scars crisscrossed the muscle, and they could make out the edges of metal plates beneath the skin. But he gripped the bar with both hands, one flesh, one metal, and pulled. The weight moved smoothly, no strain, no struggle, just controlled, precise motion. 1 representative, 2, 3. By the 5th rep, it was clear that 150 pounds wasn't challenging him at all. Jackson stared, his mouth slightly open. "Holy shit, dude. What happened to you?" Robert didn't answer. He just kept pulling. 6 reps, 7, 8. On the 9th rep, he paused at the bottom of the movement and looked directly at Jackson. "IED, he said simply. "Fallujah. 2004. Then he completed the 10th rep, released the bar, and stood up. The gym was dead silent. Robert started to roll his sleeves back down, but Martinez stepped forward. "Wait," he said softly. You were military?" Robert paused. "Marine Corps, 1st Battalion, 3rd Marines. Did 3 tours." Jackson found his voice. "The bomb. That's how you lost." "Lost my hand, most of the feeling in my right arm. Took 43 pieces of shrapnel in my legs." Robert's voice was matter-of-fact, like he was reciting a grocery list. "Spent 2 years in Walter Reed learning how to walk again." The silence stretched out, thick and uncomfortable. Finally, Martinez asked, "Why didn't you say anything?" When people were calling me Gimpy," Robert almost smiled, "because it doesn't matter what you call me. I know who I am." He finished rolling down his sleeves and picked up his towel. "But to answer your question, I push myself every day because every day I wake up is a day I wasn't supposed to have. And every rep I do, every step I take, every weight I lift is proof that they didn't win." He started walking toward the locker room, his limp no longer looking like weakness. It looked like victory. Jackson caught up with him before he reached the locker room. "Hey, wait up." Robert turned, his expression neutral. "Look, man, I'm sorry for what I said, for how we've been treating you. We didn't know." Robert studied him for a moment. "Would it have mattered if you did know?" The question hit Jackson like a punch. He wanted to say yes, of course it would have mattered, but the honest answer was more complicated. I don't know, he admitted. Maybe not at first. But it should have. Robert nodded slowly. The thing is, Jackson, yeah, I know your name, I pay attention. The thing is, respect shouldn't be conditional on someone's story. You shouldn't need to know that I'm a combat veteran to treat me like a human being. Jackson's face flushed. You're right. You're absolutely right. But, Robert continued, I also understand that young Marines sometimes need to learn things the hard way. I was young once too. He extended his prosthetic hand. Robert Chen, Staff Sergeant, retired. Jackson shook it, surprised by the firm, controlled grip. Corporal Jackson, active duty, and thank you for your service, for real. Robert smiled, the first real smile anyone at the gym had ever seen from him. Thank you for yours. You still serving means it mattered. Word spread through the gym quickly. By the next morning, everyone knew about Robert's story, not through gossip or whispers, but because Jackson had told them, respectfully, honestly, and with a new understanding of what strength really meant. The change was immediate and profound. When Robert came in at 6 a.m., people nodded to him, not with pity, but with recognition. Tony Ricci approached him during his workout. Staff Sergeant, I wanted to thank you for your service, and to let you know that your membership here is complimentary from now on. Robert shook his head. That's not necessary. It's necessary for me, Tony replied. My dad served in Vietnam. Never talked about it much, but I knew it cost him. Men like you. You've already paid enough. Over the following weeks, something beautiful happened at Iron's gym. The young Marines started asking Robert for advice, not just about lifting, but about discipline, about persistence, about how to keep going when everything hurt. He became an unofficial mentor, sharing not war stories but life lessons, how to set realistic goals, how to measure progress in small victories, how to understand that strength wasn't about how much you could lift, but about how many times you could get back up. Jackson in particular became almost protective of Robert. When new members came in and made comments about the old guy with the limp, Jackson would quietly pull them aside and set them straight. That man has more strength in his little finger than you'll have in your whole body, he'd say, and if you're smart, you'll learn from him instead of judging him. One morning, about a month after the incident, Robert was working on his deadlifts when a new member, a college kid, maybe 19, made a snide comment to his buddy about why old people even bother with gyms. Jackson was across the room, but he heard it. He started walking over, his face darkening. But Robert caught his eye and shook his head slightly, a small gesture that said, I've got this. Robert finished his set, racked the weight, and walked over to the kid. Excuse me, he said politely. I couldn't help but overhear your comment. I wanted to ask you something. The kid looked uncomfortable but tried to maintain his attitude. Yeah? How much do you deadlift? I don't know. $225, maybe $250 on a good day. Robert nodded. That's impressive. I can only do $135 these days. The kid smirked, thinking he'd been proven right. But here's the thing, Robert continued. Before my injury, I could deadlift 405. So for me, 135 represents about 70% recovery from being told I'd never walk normally again. What percentage of impossible does your 250 represent? The kid's smirk faded. The number on the weight doesn't matter, Robert said gently. What matters is the distance between where you started and where you are now. And for some of us, that distance is measured in different units. He turned to walk away, then paused. Keep working hard, son. And remember, everyone in here is fighting their own battles. The guy struggling with 95 pounds might be lifting more weight than the guy pressing 315, depending on what they're carrying beyond the iron. 6 months later, Iron's gym had transformed into something special. Not because of new equipment or fancy renovations, but because of the culture that had grown around Robert's presence. A sign appeared on the wall, handwritten in Tony's careful script. Strength is not measured by what you can carry, but by how far you've carried it. New members were told Robert's story, not to make them feel guilty or ashamed, but to help them understand what real resilience looked like. The gym started hosting adaptive fitness classes for veterans with disabilities. Robert helped design the programs, drawing on his experience at Walter Reed and his years of relearning his own limitations. Jackson extended his enlistment and started volunteering at the VA hospital, working with wounded warriors who were beginning their own journeys back to strength. And every morning at 6 a.m., Robert Chen continued his routine, still limping, still grimacing through exercises that caused him pain, still fighting battles that most people would never understand. But now he wasn't fighting alone. The young Marines learned something important that day at Iron's gym. They learned that strength comes in many forms, that scars tell stories worth hearing, that the people you judge might be heroes you haven't recognized yet. They learned that respect is earned through character, not appearance, that persistence matters more than performance, that the measure of a person isn't how high they can climb, but how many times they're willing to start over when they fall. Most importantly, they learned that when you see someone struggling, someone limping, someone doing their best with what they have left, your first instinct shouldn't be to mock. It should be to listen. Because you never know when the person you're laughing at is actually the person you should be learning from. Robert Chen didn't need anyone's pity. He didn't need special treatment or sympathy or allowances made for his disabilities. All he needed was the same respect we should give every person fighting their own battles, carrying their own weight, doing their best with whatever hand they've been dealt. Some people's scars are visible. Others hide theirs beneath smiles and swagger and loud voices. But everyone has them. Everyone is fighting something, and everyone deserves the chance to show you what strength really looks like. So I ask you, have you ever met someone who taught you that real strength isn't about what you can lift, but about how you lift others up? Share their story in the comments. Say their name, because at True Human Tales, we believe that every scar tells a story worth hearing. Thank you for watching. Subscribe, share, and help us honor the people who show us what courage really means. Until next time, before you judge someone's struggles, remember, you might be looking at someone's greatest victory.